We should all mute, right? Okay.
Welcome everybody to the presentation today, Learning from Experiences, Building Capacity of Educators through the California Early Math Initiative. We're glad that you've joined us today. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Osnat Zur for a further welcome and introduction.
Hi everyone, welcome to our session or panel. Like Paul said, focusing on our panelists and their experiences, building capacity of educators through the California Early Math Initiative. I'm Osnat Zur. I'm the Director of Early Childhood Learning and Development at Wested, and I'll be co-facilitating this panel with Paul Reimer from the AIMS Center. Today, we'll be hearing from the panelists about their experiences in implementing early math professional learning and coaching in their agencies as part of their participation in the California statewide Early Math Initiative. Before I go into introducing Paul and the panelists, just a few words about the California Early Math Initiative. It was funded by the California Department of Education, and it was led by Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, who collaborated with several partners, including the AIMS Center for Math and Science Education, the California Early Math Project, Les Mayfield for video and media, and Wested. The initiative was designed to support young children birth to 8, so it covers quite a range in early math learning, particularly through raising educators and families' awareness of the importance of early math and in building confidence and capacity, practices, knowledge, teaching skills for early math educators. I'm now going to invite Paul to introduce himself and share more about the professional learning and coaching in early math provided through the initiative by the AIMS Center.
Thank you, Osnat, for the welcome and introduction. And again, welcome everyone to the session. My name is Paul Reimer. I'm the director at the AIMS Center, and our role in the Early Math Initiative was to provide professional development coaching to our participating agencies. So I'd like to just share a little bit about what that looked like, what the agencies who participated were asked to do, and how we sort of went about that work. So as Dr. Zur said, this project had several components, and the professional learning and coaching was one aspect of the work that we'll be talking about and sharing today. In addition to that, there was a focus on early math resources for families and educators, as well as family engagement. The Early Math Initiative has engaged 30 agencies across the state in receiving training and professional learning to engage educators in their own local contexts through at least 3 professional development sessions and 6 individual or group coaching sessions. So the work kicked off with the 30 agencies, each of those agencies selecting some facilitators who would join us for a training session and for a training program that would begin in the summer of 2019. Approximately 92 facilitators from these agencies joined us. They have different roles in their agencies, and we'll hear more about that from our panelists briefly. But the impact was really, it was over 1,400 educators then across the state who then received that professional learning, and over 17,000 children then who were impacted from birth through age 8. The initiative kicked off in the summer of 2019 with a week-long hands-on professional development session that was focused on early childhood mathematics. And this was hands-on in all senses of the word. Our participants engaged in really thinking about and experiencing what it's like to learn early mathematics. So that was through a variety of different constructions of shapes and figures, through patterning, through learning about counting in different bases, with the real intention of communicating that everyone can be a mathematician, everyone can do mathematics, everyone does do mathematics. And it's about finding those unique ways that we can call that out, draw that out, and notice that in the experiences around us. The professional learning project continued through a quarterly community of practice and monthly coaching. And we started the community of practice as a hybrid with our local context participants joining us in person and everyone else across the state joining virtually. And this was before the COVID pandemic hit. So we were already sort of used to a virtual mode. Our participants had materials that they received and were able to use with, so we were able to do virtual hands-on mathematics learning together from a distance. Then in addition to that, our organizations received coaching throughout the year to develop their own implementation plans. How would they want to really take these ideas into their own local contexts? Working with the workforce and educators that they know well, using methods and strategies that they already have in place. And we concluded this the project with a virtual institute in 2020, where our organizations created posters and shared their implementation plans, both successes and challenges, and what we learned about implementing professional learning in early childhood mathematics across the state. Today, we want to learn a little bit more about their implementation plans and the successes, the challenges, and the key learnings. And so we have with us some very special speakers today, representatives from 5 of our organizations across the state to share their stories. So I'd like to now allow them to introduce themselves, to tell us a little bit about their organization and who was on their team participating in this project. So Claudia, we'll start with you.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Claudia and my organization is EPU, Exceptional Parents Unlimited. We're located in Fresno, California, and my team was made up of 3 different staff from 3 different programs in our agency. We had Selena Cooper, who was a home visitor for the Learning About Parenting program. We had Crystal Vasquez. She was a lead teacher in one of our toddler groups. And myself, I'm the senior program manager for our early intervention program. So there was a good mix of people in our program that participated. So I'll let the rest of the team talk about their agency.
Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Mendoza. I am an early childhood specialist with the Placer County Office of Education. And our team consisted of Teresa Dawson-Roberts, who is our Director of Early Childhood Education. And then 2 of our fabulous staff, Stephen Bruce, who is also an Early Childhood Education Specialist, and our STEM Coordinator for Placer County Office of Education, Heidi Espindola.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jill Johnson. I am a coordinator with the Riverside County Office of Education in Southern California. And our team consisted of 2, myself being 1, and I oversee all of our resource and referral programs, working especially with the early education community. And Christy Moran, who's one of our program development specialists, who works with our state preschool programs and center-based childcare programs.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Eunice Monroe. I'm the Director of Early Education at the San Diego County Office of Ed. Our team consisted of 3 individuals. I'm here with one of my peers, and both her and I serve children or work with programs serving children 0 to 5.
Good morning. My name is Blanca Silva, a senior program specialist also with the San Diego County Office of Education, where I too manage quality projects for programs serving children 0 to 5. Our other teammate, Mark Alcorn, he is the mathematics coordinator for K through 3rd grade here at SDCOE.
Great. So we have a range of representatives from different programs. In the introduction, we are also noticing the people that were involved with them representing different roles and capacities within their organizations, which we'll hear more about. We want to start by asking you to tell us your story, focusing on the decisions you have made when implementing the Early Math initiative in your own context. We note that the initiative had some general parameters, but each of you had the opportunity to make it unique based on your needs and your context. So we want to hear from you, what were some of the decisions you've made that led to successes or challenges as you tell your story? We'll start with Eunice. Oh, sorry, Cloud. Yeah, Eunice.
Yes, good morning. Early on, we made the decision to work with programs that serve the entire continuum of 0 to 3 years, 0 to 8 years of age. We leveraged existing community partnerships with the school district because they serve children 0 to 8, which is not something that is typically found in our county, but this program had infants, toddlers, and grade school. And then we leveraged our partnerships with a community-based organization that brought together family childcare providers throughout one area of San Diego County, which is known for diverse groups, diverse demographics. And so we chose that group also because the providers served the mixed age group. So we wanted to make sure that our message, that our initiative really reached children 0 to 8.
And further, our focus was spatial awareness for the entire age continuum. So Eunice and I focused on, while Eunice and I focused on 0 to 5, Mark worked with teachers in K through 3rd grade. We not only provided professional learning events, but we also provided group coaching, observation and feedback cycles on their implementation of strategies in the classroom. We issued participation stipends, resources, and materials for their programs to support this newfound knowledge around spatial awareness and math. Similarly, we provided training and coaching in Spanish to the family childcare providers. When the pandemic hit in March of 2019, we were close to the end of wrapping up our implementation for this project. So we were still able to adjust our last coaching session and our year-end celebration in a virtual setting.
Thank you.
So,
Daniel?
yeah, so at
Please
the
go ahead.
Placer County Office of Education, what we decided to do was first reach out to our state preschool and Head Start programs. So what we did is we implemented projects based on some concepts that they weren't necessarily familiar with. We really wanted to touch, knowing that our teachers and our educators have a high level of education. We wanted to touch on topics that they might not necessarily have worked on before, such as coding, doing some virtual learning. In the session, we also learned about professional noticing, which we carried over to them. But really our big focus was to get teacher buy-in. Again, because they had that high of education, we wanted to ensure that we didn't get a lot of, I already know this, which a lot of us are familiar with that happens. And we didn't really want to overload them with too much professional development. And we wanted to create that emotional support for teachers, because a lot of times we see when we hear math, we hear the moans and groans. And we wanted to make sure that we are addressing that and reaching out to best possible way by providing those hands-on materials for the teachers. We offered coaching sessions as well. And we did move virtually when the pandemic happened. And later we were able to reach out to our in-homes, which we just started to do recently. So our big goal was to make sure that we got teachers involved, integrated, and really aware of what was going on, what they were already doing, and then broadening and deepening that.
Great. Claudia.
Yes, and at EPU, we saw the opportunity to not just have impact on providers, but also direct impact on parents that we served in the homes. So we chose to focus both on the providers and the parents that participated in home visits. So when we first started focusing on our home visitors, we did try to create, a lot of opportunities for them to have fun with the material for them to see that, whatever math ideas they had, about what they've been introduced to with math, that there was, if you focus on making it fun for the children, that there isn't that opportunity to have those fears or be reluctant to introduce math. So by helping them make that experience fun, they gain confidence to support this math initiative and then move forward supporting parents in the home. So parents did get to learn how to utilize everyday items found in their homes and then implementing those math concepts during their daily routines. So it was overall, it was a great experience, and we got to see a little bit of that trickle effect into putting that work with the providers, but also into the homes.
Great. I just want to highlight from your responses how each agency made a decision on who to approach and what math content to focus on. We heard about engaging of home visitors, family childcare providers, educators in preschool settings, educators in early grades, for example, in San Diego, where you took on implementation that was across different sectors in the early childhood and in early grades in elementary schools. And also what areas of focus you have decided to take on, from coding to spatial reasoning, number sense, and teacher's practice with noticing. I'm now going to have Paul take us to the next question.
Thank you. We'd like to hear about what some of the impacts of the Early Math Initiative were for the educators that you worked with. So it's been great to hear about your approach and the context that you selected, and even some of the guiding principles that led you in your work. So let's talk a little bit about what impacts did you see? What were some of the impacts for the educators and the children who were part of this program?
So in Riverside, we were kind of late bloomers with all the content that we had gotten from the Institute. So it took us a while to get rolling, kind of get our feet under us and decide what we were going to do. So we're still seeing some of the impacts. So we had our first really big training in February of 2020. So we all know what happened in March of 2020. So, but one of the great things that came out of that training that we did is we invited broad scope from our early care and education providers, but we also extended it within our own county office of education. So we had folks who were part of the K-12 math system that attended the training, and it created a whole new connection for us. And we were able to connect with them on adding kind of a pre-K section to any of the math trainings that they're doing. So now we have this ongoing training kind of coordination that is happening, and it's now stemming, we're seeing with the emergence of UPK and UTK, that we're doing a connected math kind of onslaught in Riverside County that starts with the early education and goes through especially third grade here in this county. So it's been great to see that. We have also created a whole professional development training series for early childhood educators, folks working in centers, anyone working with children, that has an entire strand that is early math focused. And we also tie it in with early literacy. One of our superintendent's initiatives is early literacy. So we try and make that connection whenever we can. So we're starting to see this connection and some of the impacts. But I think because we were a little late to the party, our impacts are still kind of being gauged. Right now, it's about connections and those connections that we didn't have before. So
I also wanted to share one of the impacts of our work. So Blanca, Mark, and I work for the same organization, and Blanca and I work in 0 to 5, and Mark works in K through 3rd grade. So even though we've worked together before, we had never had the opportunity to collaborate until the initiative. And so through this work, Mark became an expert on the foundations and framework and working with children 0 to 8. And so we did too. And one of the great things about this is that through that initial collaboration with Mark and his work in math, We are now collaborating with our work with UPK and creating a system for P3 alignment. So it was a great inception to this great collaboration.
And so when examining the direct impact, well, here at least in San Diego County with the educators, we directly impacted 50 educators who participated in our project, but the ripple effect that they had on students' learning and experiences with math is limitless. Each educator became knowledgeable and appropriate learning standards of math and physical education, and they left understanding the benefits of spatial awareness as it relates to children's success in school, and they explored strategies to make spatial awareness come to life in the classroom. And most importantly, they understood that anyone can become a mathematician, so that they can let go of that fear that they have around teaching math, and many educators do, and that it's also never too late to learn spatial awareness. Many of our family childcare providers shared testimonials of how their environment had changed to include math materials, and now they felt so much more confident in teaching math to every child that walks through their door.
That's fantastic. It's great to hear about the opportunity for new collaborations and even to hear about the coherence that can happen across grade levels, where sometimes there are typically gaps or chasms that this work can really, sounds like it's really bridged some of that and even created some new relationship and new very productive collaboration going forward. That's fantastic. Let's talk a little bit more about the outcomes for children. What sort of other kinds of things did you see impacting children through your work?
So in Placer, one of the topics we decided to focus on, one of the things in math for children was coding. So we brought about this idea of first telling the children that they were going to do math and they were going to become mathematicians. So everybody talked about, oh, we're mathematicians when we're doing math, to kind of ingrain that, into their brain that they were actually doing math and learning. So with coding, what we did is we started with a no tech kind of coding where it was all directional languages. And we started to see all these processes and things throughout daily life, how we did our daily schedule, how we might do something like a recipe was actually coding with that directional language, following step by step. We use these really great items with arrows. They're these coding penguins that the children kind of got to play around with and do on their own. And then we moved into technology with robots, allowing them to move. And the whole time really focusing on that language, that mathematical language of, at this age, children might not be able to tell you left and right, and we don't really teach that same developmentally appropriate, but we talk about this way, that way, up and down. And what we found is that the children started to utilize that language in their play. In their processes, whether it was building something. Oh no, that's not what you do this time. They would say, this comes next. First you do this, then you do that. And so they started to follow those processes and realize that that's, a part of their everyday life. Even so much so that we'd have parents coming and telling us, well, I was trying to make some shortcuts doing this project at home. And they said, no, this is what you do first, and this is what you do next, and this comes after. So we found, that connection with children in their everyday lives and what they were doing, and allowing them to see that math was everywhere, and then also acknowledging that and talking with them about that. So they saw coding not just with electronics or building computer programs, but more so coding was who they were and what they are and what they're doing as part of our society and how they exist in that.
And for EPU, in our program, we were really bringing more of that awareness, because a lot of the children we serve, in my program specifically, we serve children with disabilities that are 0 to 3. And so one of the biggest impacts is just, helping people realize that the way we talk about math to young children is very important, and that children learn through everyday experiences and through interactions with trusted adults. So we're also helping the staff realize that the toddlers use these math concepts that are simple, but yet help them make sense of the world around them. So I just wanted to make sure that in this project, we all wanted them to know that we need to continue to push that with parents, with our agency, creating that space for children to explore and play and have fun with math.
It's fantastic to hear about the ways that this work with adults also shapes this work with children. And I think it's so powerful to see that when we think about adults, and Claudia, as you mentioned, these trusted individuals who work with young children, that the experiences of these adults are really key and important as well, like the ways that they think about and talk about mathematics, and then how that's transferred to young children. And Daniel, I'm sure with experience with coding, that was part of the work as well, of trying to sort of understand this sort of coding thing and what it's really about, and then to think that it's really about these very intuitive movements. We all kind of code ourselves as we go through our environments. We decide where to go, where to turn. We, like you said, we create these routines. And so even sort of, I think sounds like there's been some great work defining what those things could look like from a developmentally appropriate lens, from sort of a learning perspective of what it takes to learn some of these things, and how that might be tied to the natural environments where children live and grow and play. And sometimes it sounds like all it takes is for us to really begin to notice those things, to draw them out, and to really engage in those conversations. There's a question in the chat from Yvette about what kind of fun home activities did you provide? And so I don't know if there's anybody who would like to address an example of what that might be in your own work.
So for our home visitors, one of the projects we did in the home was shape finders, and it was all made with materials that parents have in the home. And what it did is help the child find shapes around the home, and they get to create different ones. So if they wanted to look for circles, they created a circle around this paper and utilizing saran wrap. So that was just magical to see something so simple yet so fun, and it incorporated the whole family.
We will move to our next question. And given that it is a panel with others listening and maybe in the process of thinking how to implement early math professional learning coaching within their own agencies, I wonder if you can share recommendations or lessons learned with other similar organizations who are maybe interested in supporting early math in their own context. So what advice, what suggestions or recommendations do you have for your peers?
For any agency serving families in the home, I think one of the biggest things is just making it something that's reachable for parents, and really looking at what do parents already do, what routines are their daily routines, and how can they implement those math concepts during that time. I mean, we're already talking about how to improve, behaviors or language. So math is just one of those things that we can incorporate during those early, times that parents are having the daily routines. It's easy to implement. But just for agency-wide, I think one of the biggest things was just taking a look at what you already do and how can you, we love the word mathematize that. And so that's one of the things I encourage for anyone interested.
Thank you.
I would say, for us, it was really meeting the teachers where they were at. At the time, I myself was still in the classroom when we initially did the CAMI grant with everybody and went and attended. So we kind of knew, and Stephen Bruce, he was also just recently out of the classroom, and Heidi, she's a STEM coordinator, so she's involved a lot, and Teresa, our director, is always like participating. So we kind of knew, right, to putting that team together, that we needed to be where the teachers were at. I mentioned that our teachers all have this high quality of education. So we knew we didn't want them to feel like they already knew these things, that they were left out, that they didn't need this. So we wanted them to understand it. And it was kind of like with the children as well. It was very similar. we had these conversations and we extended everything that they were doing, and we invited them to share, their concerns and what they wanted to learn. And I think the big thing for us too was having them understand that all this information, these mathematical concepts, although we're not teaching equations and we're not teaching how to code computers, but all this carries over for children into their later education, right? We're building these foundations, which I know all of us know that's what we're doing in these early years. But we want to build a solid foundation. We wanted the teachers to really feel like they were capable of creating these things. So that would be my recommendation. Build a team for this that have that diversity within themselves to reach every kind of corner of your agency, and then really listening and sharing those experiences. Allowing them to come together individually. We did that with our coaching sessions. We kind of split everybody up so that we could work with these teams individually, but also come together so that we had those conversations and deepened everything, that understanding and that meaning for everybody. That was really important for us.
Great.
I think for us, there was a few learning lessons, and kind of being the late bloomers, and part of the reluctance was trying to find a focus. And because we got so much content when we went to the Institute, trying to find a place to focus, and learning from, San Diego with Eunice and Blanca, and learning from Daniel, and they had this kind of singular focus. And it was like, oh, that makes sense. That makes a little more sense to narrow down what we were looking at. So one of the things we did was tying that a couple of things. One was dispelling math myths, and especially with our early educators, because that was one of the first things we did at the Institute, and that was so impactful for us to stop saying, I'm not a math person, and doing that with our early educators, and even for them to do that with the families that they're serving, that we're all math people. We're all math people. And that concept of everyday math, bringing that in, and doing things like a community walk and looking at what everyday math is, that was a huge starting point for us. And then making that connection with literacy and the everyday math pieces, to bring that in, was very helpful to us in finding that focus. And I see there's a question in the chat, and the math professional development. So it's part of a series that we have, and it is currently been virtual, but we're going to have some in-person this year to mix with that. So I'll put my email in the chat. I believe it's Kashara, and you can email me, and I can give you some more information about that. But the other thing was really relying on connections. Connections, we all know, is essential to everything we do, and making those connections with, with our K-12 partners, making those connections, because they actually saw we weren't teaching them just to count on their fingers and we were doing pretty advanced math skills in a very easy way for our providers and for, the children that they'll be working with to understand. So I think those connections are huge, and rely on those as much as you possibly can. Those are our biggest learning lessons.
And I'll follow what Jill was saying, because it's very interesting. A lot of people have a focus of literacy, and not a lot of people have a focus on math. And I think it's because what we've said, there's a lot of fear around teaching math, because nobody feels that confident in being that expert. And so when we were trying to garner these partnerships from the school district and the community-based organizations, that was their thing. They were saying, but our focus is literacy. It's not really math. But when we shared with them the information and the research on how spatial reasoning plays a critical role in problem solving and reading comprehension, they were eager to participate. They didn't know that. And I think that's something that not a lot of people know, how math really supports all learning. It really supports all of the domains in learning. And it's really important to have that accessible. And it's also important to know that children learn best through play and hands-on activities. And so we always spoke about this, that it's not about, like Daniel was saying, about having these activities that were not fun, but it was all hands-on, because what we know is that children learn through embodied cognition. And so we wanted to make sure that teachers knew that, because math is fun and we want children to fall in love with math. So when you make it fun, when you make it hands-on, you're developing this embodied cognition in the children.
So to further speak to what Eunice was sharing, teaching and exposing children to concepts like spatial awareness on a daily basis can build their identities as mathematicians. Children who practice spatial awareness in preschool have the potential to be ahead of their peers by the time they enter kindergarten. One thing that we found helpful was incorporating the professional noticing form that was provided to us during the Early Math Institute. This form allowed educators to focus on things that they hadn't noticed before as it related to children's abilities, and to then plan accordingly and to help them build their skills around math. Similarly, our participants within our cohort created a quality improvement plan. This was a plan where they set action steps leading towards their math goal that they each individually set as an individual or as a team in their classrooms. We also provided incentive materials to each educator that was aligned to their learning goal. Nevertheless, this allowed the educators to have a plan and a sense of accountability and accomplishment.
Thank you for sharing these wonderful takeaways and recommendations for others. I think, Paul, I'll try to characterize some of the main points we've heard, and then I'll pass it on to you to add any of yours. I think a big theme that came up is really building a positive perception of what is early math, and helping your educators and families see that math is part of everyday life. Like Claudia said, that math can be playful and engaging through hands-on. And this was an approach that was instilled to the initiative as a whole. That math is not something isolated from other things that children develop. In fact, it could be an instrument, it can be integrated with literacy. It's a way of them in understanding themselves in relation to their surrounding, to their environment. A lot of you talked about spatial reasoning, understanding directionality, and following directions like Daniel shared. And you also help us see how math is not just about counting and doing arithmetic. I think the range of examples we've heard here went beyond what someone may typically think about what early math is. And I also heard that those hands-on, playful notion of math and helping everyone see that you can perceive yourself as a math person, that it's not someone else, it can be within you, served as an entry point for you as you talked with teachers and invited them to take part in it. So I just wanted to note that even though the you all came to implement it to one overarching initiative, each of you have their own stories of the how. But there are so many common factors that have guided you in the approach, in the way you perceive the work. The specifics are certainly different because each of you made decisions on what math content to focus on, who to engage within your community, what the coaching and training sessions may look like, which I think was the beauty of this initiative. No one dictated for you the specifics. You had the autonomy to shape what it looked like within your own counties or agencies. But yet, still hear a lot of common denominators across your stories in the approach you brought into the work. I also want to note that each of you in your own ways talked about the importance of building teams, and that it's not a one person bringing it and implementing it within your organization. It's through the teamwork that it allowed you to share, to think together, to plan together, and to build the connections that Jill talked about that really are going a long way and allow for the sustainability of the initiative. So these are the things that stood out to me, and I'm going to invite Paul to build on it and share more of what came for you.
I agree, and I just want to thank all of our speakers, our panelists for just the investment in this work. And I had this sense from all of the stories that were shared today that this is really people work. This is about human relationships. And I think about Claudia, the way you talked about trust and about these trusted persons in young people's lives. And I think at the same time, I also heard that it was important for you as agency leaders to develop and to really build on trust with the educators you're working with. And it's so clear. And I think we've all heard stories about, and maybe it's part of our own story about mathematics being kind of you're either inside or you're outside. You're either good at it or you're not good at it. And it's been used to either privilege or to oppress. And I think one of the key aspects of this work is it's really an equity-driven piece, because you're communicating that mathematics it's a universal human activity. It's something that we all do. We look for patterns. We try to make sense of our environments. We impose or create order in our environments. We structure our days, Daniel, as you were talking about structuring your day and ordering it. And I think that one of the powerful things about that approach is that it encourages us to help children to see those kinds of mathematical thinking ways in their daily environment. And that's a real shift, because I think for many of us, mathematics was something that was done to us. Mathematics was a subject area that needed to be taught. If only we could just open the heads and dump it in. And that's really not how we learn. This is the idea that we need to build on children's natural and intuitive ways of thinking. We need to notice what how children are thinking and how they're acting, what they're doing, and then we need to build on that thinking. And I'm excited to hear that you've all developed these very research-driven ways to begin to interpret children's thinking. To really begin to think about the trajectory of how concepts and skills build on one another, and to really enhance that and draw on that. So that was really exciting. And the other thing I want to just add too is that just the wonderful richness and variety of contexts that you all work in, and how your approaches were really very well suited to those contexts. And Osnat, I think this is part of what you were mentioning, is just the idea that this wasn't a one-size-fits-all initiative or one-size-fits-all approach where you were given a training binder and then you took it to your community.
Exactly.
And did it. This was there was a lot of trust in you as agency experts and as educators and as facilitators to really think about what approach would build on the things you already have in place, could strengthen and build the capacity of your educators. And Jill, as you mentioned, it took some time to kind of like focus and find what that would be. But I think that was just really powerful work. And I think all across the board, what really was really valued in this initiative was agency, your agency to make those decisions, the agency of the educators you worked with, and children's agency to really determine that the kind of mathematics they would engage in through play and through their daily environments. So a big thank you to all of you for this powerful, important, and what sounds like sustaining work that I'm excited to see where this work continues to go in the future. I want to
thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And I want to thank our attendees today at the Early Math Symposium. Thank you for joining us today for this session. We hope that you've been able to pull some inspiration from this session, but we know that we also shared a lot in a short amount of time. So you may want to reach out further. Please feel free to reach out to any of our panelists, to any of our speakers. You'll find their contact information on this session page. I want to thank Dr. Osnat Sur for co-hosting with me. Thank you again to all of our attendees. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the day at the Early Math Symposium. And thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.